Hi, my name is Britton. I'm a Christian who loves YouTube. I watch it all the time, way more than I've ever gone to small group. Sorry guys. So in Shane Dawson's The Beautiful Life of Jeffree Star series, they talk about money constantly. Like, there's way too many text inserts.
$20.
Really?
$7.48, which is 700% markup.
$3 really. Yeah.
$80.
25 or 35 million. 50,000.
0.005%. $20 at
70-30.
17.5 million.
About 35 million.
Million pallets total.
Good night. We just heard the amount. I can visualize the numbers, Shane. And looking at the whole series now that it's out, I don't think anyone can make the argument that Jeffree and Shane aren't working hard. Like, sure, it's highly creative and fun work, but there is obviously a lot of stress and worry and emotional labor going on. And I'm sure there were at least a half a dozen meetings between packaging and accounting, and there were at least 3 dozen meetings between Shane and Jeffree's lawyers. Like, oh, guys, it takes so much to sell something. And while I absolutely believe Jeffree when he says this is an art to him, it is an art that's being sold for money. And I think at this point, we just have to ask, what does God think about money? Can the Bible tell me? Okay, so the Bible has no problem just telling you to avoid things. Just hard no, avoid, flee, you get the idea.
They cast their silver into the streets, and their gold is like an unclean thing. Their silver and gold are not able to deliver them in the day of the wrath of the Lord. They cannot satisfy their hunger or fill their stomachs with it, for it was a stumbling block of their iniquity.
Gosh, Ezekiel, you too? Well, it's pretty impossible to do it in our modern era. I think it's worth pointing out that back in the Bible days, it did seem possible to go without literal money. Like, most people had crops or herds or were artisans. Everyone seemed to be able to produce a literal thing that they could then exchange for other literal items. Maybe it wasn't possible or convenient in the major cities, but it conceivably was an option, especially if you lived and worked in the countryside. But while we get a lot of verses warning about the corrupting powers of money, there's very few telling you to just not participate, even though that could have been an option for God's people back then. And Timothy comes pretty close when he says, "Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." And even while decrying the dangers of money, he gives us a little bit of wiggle room when he says, "The love of money is the roots of all kind of evil." You can have all the money in the world, but as long as you don't actually feel affection or devotion to it, then congrats, you're uncorrupted. But Jesus takes this idea a step further. Luke 16:13-15. "No one can serve 2 masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money." The Pharisees, who dearly loved their money, heard all this and scoffed at him. Then he said to them, "You like to appear righteous in public, but God knows your hearts. What this world honors is detestable in the sight of God." And I find it very interesting that Jesus sets up a hard dichotomy with God on one side and money itself, not the love of it, not the hoarding of it, literal money on the other. Jesus doesn't leave money as a passive object that you can love or not love. He turns it into a person, a master, that you can only serve in place of serving God. So that's from the mouth of Jesus as spoken by Luke. That kind of wraps it up, right? God good, money bad, avoid the bad stuff, and we can all go home and start trading sheepskins on our daughters, right? Oh. Deuteronomy 8:18. "But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth, and so confirms his covenant, which he swore to your ancestors as it was today." Well, that's super confusing. I know it's a little wordy and Old Testament-y, but basically this is saying that God has given you the ability to produce money, and that this is the fulfillment of a promise, a covenant, that was made before. But okay, like, remember the Timothy verse? This says God gives you the ability to produce wealth. maybe you have it, but you're not really supposed to use it, or use it sparingly, you know? 2 Chronicles 1, 11 through 12. God replied to Solomon, "You have made the right choice. Instead of asking for wealth or treasure or fame or the death of your enemies or even for long life for yourself, you have asked for wisdom and knowledge so that you can rule my people over whom I have made you king. I will give you wisdom and knowledge, and in addition, I will give you more wealth, treasure, and fame than any king has ever had before or will ever have again." Well, that's not very restrained, is it, God? How am I supposed to predicate an entire episode on the evils of wealth hoarding when you're just giving out more stuff to literal kings? And seriously, like the rest of Chronicles just reads like an Old Testament episode of Cribs. Solomon is so rich, silver becomes like tinfoil in Jerusalem. Deuteronomy 28:12. The Lord will open the heavens, the storehouse of his bounty, to send rain on your land in season, and to bless all the work of your hands. You will lend to many nations, but will borrow from none. Well, great. Now we're the head of a banking empire. The decadence of this book is frankly very problematic. To be honest, this tends to happen a lot in the Bible. The blessings of God aren't always just physical healing and good vibes. They usually come along with some sort of financial blessing. I don't like the proliferation of the prosperity doctrine in American Christianity, but I can't say it's totally biblically unfounded. But this brings me back to the moment that really made me want to do this series in the first place. It happens in the very beginning of the first episode.
This is not my life. And also, I feel stupid that that's not my life because all these YouTubers who started after me. It is embarrassing. Like when I look at that Forbes list and I look at like Lily Sig, Markiplier, all these people, I'm so not close to that it's like crazy.
It's not that Shane needs the money in the sense that he's trapped in a desperate financial situation and the sales from this palette are the only thing that will relieve the burden. But rather, there's a real sense of loss and turmoil that he hasn't achieved what others have in less amount of time. His problem isn't financial, it's emotional. Even though God gives financially throughout the Bible, I think we can still see the desires of his heart about the place money has in our lives. We as Christians can use money as a tool to pay for things that stabilize our lives, like a place to live, food to eat, electricity to power our Bibles. But it's never in of itself supposed to act as a security blanket that gives us actual peace of mind. We're never supposed to look at our bank accounts and go, now I can sleep tonight. That relief, that faith that our needs will be met is supposed to come from God directly and God alone. As it says in Ecclesiastes, wisdom is a shelter as money is a shelter. But the advantage of knowledge over money is this: wisdom preserves those who have it, with the implication being that money will not. So maybe the scope of this question was a little much for one video, but maybe we can end this series on a real clickbaity topic. Let me think.